Hello subscribers and non-subscribers, welcome back to Elite Dangerous. This video is actually going to be just me talking about essentially my issues with CQC here in Elite Dangerous. So CQC is essentially the game, or essentially the devs adding in something that's essentially, think a traditional multiplayer game. Think something like Call of Duty, Battlefield, so on and so forth. And that's roughly really what CQC is, except of course you're flying around in your ships. But I personally have some issues with it. Generally speaking, these issues are, or the issues that I have with it are things that are essentially missing from games of, well, like this style here. So, like I said, CQC is essentially think something along the lines of like Call of Duty or Battlefield, in terms of essentially the way it plays out. However, in here, there is, for whatever reason, no real sort of matchmaking system that tries to sort of balance the teams in any real way. What I mean by that is you will be thrown into matches against enemies that have just vastly superior weapons or equipment than you, which, to be honest, doesn't really make any sense to me. I have actually fought some enemies that were like rank 30 and had ridiculously powerful weapons in comparison to what I had and what the rest of my team had, which honestly is kind of an issue in my opinion, because I don't think you're going to have very many people that even really want to try to play something that they're just essentially going to get raffle stomped by the enemy constantly. I know I wouldn't. If I'm going to have to fight enemies that have vastly superior equipment than me, to where they can pretty much kill me in like 3 shots after they take my shields down, then yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not going to want to play that personally. I'm sure it's going to be the same way for a number of people as well. My other issue for myself is the way spawns work. The game is very much willing to, whenever needed, spawn you like right next to an enemy. I've had that happen a couple of times where an enemy is really not that far away from me. Now, granted, at the start of the match, you will generally speaking spawn near your teammates, from what I can tell. However, after that, yeah, you should not be too surprised if you spawn right next to an enemy, which, to be honest, isn't really good. You shouldn't be spawning right next to an enemy. You shouldn't have to worry about an enemy spawning directly behind you after you start moving towards combat, which, sadly, you do have to worry about that. The game will either A, spawn you right next to an enemy, or the game will spawn you, and then when you go to start flying out towards where the fighting is, the game will spawn an enemy directly behind you or relatively close by. And so that doesn't really work out all that well, realistically speaking. Or at least that's not really a that's something that really should be fixed, because that's not something you usually want to have to deal with. Then also I have an issue of there is no physical, so there's a boundary on these maps. However, you have no idea where these boundaries are. There is nothing on your radar to indicate where the edges of the map are, and there's nothing physically on the map or physically in the world to indicate exactly where the edge of the map is. You can see that there are sort of billboards out in the distance, but those billboards are actually further out than where the edge of the map is, which is kind of, well, odd. Realistically speaking, they probably should just go and have those billboards and whatnot back there be right there at the edge, so you know, okay, that's physically right where the edge of the map is, so you know. That way you don't have to go and fly out there and then be told, self-destruct sequence initiated in 20 seconds. Yeah, I don't think people really want to hear that. It helps if you know where the boundary is so that you can sort of anticipate what you should do. as you approach it, but since the game doesn't actually physically tell you where the boundary is, whether on the radar or physically with like essentially walls to block you out, although of course don't bother putting walls to actually block people out, but at least have something there so that people can physically tell where the boundaries are, because that's kind of helpful, to be honest. But yeah, so those are sort of my 3 complaints with it. Generally speaking, you should be able to sort of see that as we play through this. So again, I've got to deal with enemies that have just vastly, and sometimes allies that have vastly superior equipment than what everybody else in the match has, which is silly. I'm only something like rank 2, I think, in this video, maybe rank 3. But I think rank 2, and then I think I get rank 3 in this match, and then the second match I am rank 3 out of the gate. Either way, nonetheless, I still find it odd that the game will try to match me up against people that are rank 30. Realistically speaking, the game should prioritize matching you with people of a similar rank to you. If need be, it will rank you with people that are 30 up. But it should try to go and get you people of a similar rank. So me being rank 3 comes toward the end of these 2 recordings, maybe I think actually rank 4 by the end of these recordings. The game should probably try and match me with people between ranks 1 and, I don't know, say rank 9. I don't know, something. That way, sort of your rank is in the middle of the ranking, or the search range. So in that case, you'd have 3 oh, well, actually, I miscalculated there. It seems I'm 4 at the end of it, so it should rank me, but search for enemies or opponents and teammates as well that are between rank 1 and rank 7. My math is correct. That should have 3 ranks before my rank and 3 ranks after my rank. But then if need be, of course, it can expand that radius to then try and search people between like 1 and 10 and then 1 and 13 or whatever. But I still think that the game should try to prioritize looking for people of a relatively similar rank to you. Now, of course, you also have people that have the ability to, essentially what in Call of Duty is prestiging, so essentially starting all over again. Although in this case you get extra credits. Every time you do that, you earn more credits from now on. However, you start all over again in terms of rank and equipment. Those people should still be treated as whatever it says their rank is, I think, because they're still going to be moving or running around with that equipment. They're not going to be running around with vastly superior equipment but be considered rank 1. Now, they'll be rank 1 with rank 1 equipment, so I honestly think that the game really should still consider them rank 1 even after they essentially prestige, or whatever this game calls it. I don't actually remember off the top of my head. It was one of the tips, but I didn't really read it, or at least I don't remember. I probably read it, but I don't remember exactly what it said. So again, my thing when it comes to the matchmaking is it really should try and look for people of similar ranks, and then when it can't find enough people of similar ranks, then it slowly starts expanding that. But the reason why you'd want to search people of similar ranks is that people are fighting opponents and flying with teammates that have similar equipment to them. Because, I'm sorry, I really don't feel like fighting an enemy that has frag cannons and another enemy that has a plasma repeater, whatever the hell it's called. I really don't feel like fighting enemies that have equipment that is just in and of itself inherently better than mine. Especially since, generally speaking, they will probably kill you within just a couple of hits. Especially after they get your shields down in these cases. Sorry about that, I had to answer the phone. Again, my other complaint is that, what was it? The spawns. So, like I said, the game currently seems to not really mind spawning you relatively close to enemies, even if it means having an enemy spawn behind you shortly after you start moving to fly towards where the battle takes place. To my understanding as well, I haven't actually played Capture the Flag, but I've seen some videos of the Capture the Flag game mode here, and apparently the enemy is, or the game is very much willing to spawn the enemies right next to your base, which really makes no sense for a Capture the Flag. The enemy should have to go and fly from their base all the way to your base, grab your flag, and then fly all the way back to their base. But the game doesn't appear to really mind saying, you know what? We're going to spawn you like right next to the enemy flag so that you can capture it and then fly all the way to your base. You may not survive that anyway, but we're still going to do it anyway because, well, we want to have our capture the flag be different than the, well, traditional capture the flag, which is there are two bases, two specific bases for the two teams, and you spawn at your team's base, and then you move from your team's base to the enemy team's base, grab their flag, and then fly back. Which the game does for that first set of spawns, but after that first set of spawns, the game will pretty much always spawn you like right next to the enemy base, or at least it won't hesitate to do it. Realistically speaking, probably doesn't do it every time, but it still, at the very least, doesn't hesitate to spawn you next to the enemy or the enemy's flag, which, again, is kind of silly in my opinion because that's not the way Capture the Flag is. Like, really, in any other game that you play Capture the Flag in. And sure, they may have wanted to be different, but that just seems being different for the sake of being different, which, to me, really doesn't make any sense. And then you've got normal deathmatch, which I don't know why they call it deathmatch. They really should just call it free-for-all, because that's what it is. It's free-for-all. But for whatever reason, they decided to call it deathmatch. Even though no other game, to my knowledge, actually refers to free-for-all as deathmatch. It's, to my knowledge, generally speaking, referred to as free-for-all, because, again, that's exactly what it is. Which, that mode I haven't played. I probably won't ever play that mode, and I probably won't ever play Capture the Flag, and I actually probably won't even really touch CQC again unless they make some changes to the way it works. Because, yeah. My main issue is actually, if anything, really more so the matchmaking. Like I said, having the game be willing to go and have you have either enemies or teammates that have vastly superior equipment than what you have. And by vastly superior equipment, I mean they have just significantly better weapons, shields, etc. The game is very much willing to go and actually do things like that. Also, from what I can tell, it kind of seems like in CQC you're not able to actually target specific components on enemy ships, which is kind of interesting. I don't know why they decided to seemingly do away with that, or at the very least it didn't work when I tried to do it. But yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a second episode, or the sort of second match that I recorded of this. It was recorded, I believe, immediately after this one. And actually, as you can see here, I've got a guy on my team who's 36. The enemies have a 13, 27, and a 10. The rest of my team is like between 1 and 4 or so, while the enemy's other person was a rank 7. That's not exactly reasonable matchmaking, if I do say so myself. Because, well, it really makes no sense to go and have matchmaking set up like that. Why should I have to go and fight enemies that are 27, 17, and 10, or whatever it was, and then have one of their random guys be a 7, while the only person on my team that has really any decent equipment, I would say, to be able to effectively combat those, that 27, 17, and 10, or whatever it was, is a level 36, and he's the only person of that rank. Everybody else on the team is still in, hey, we've only been playing the game for maybe an hour. So, yeah, I just don't understand why the matchmaking is the way it is. And I think, yeah, this map I think you will see a bit easier the way the spawning seems to work. And by that I mean the game being fairly willing to go and spawn enemies like right next to you or right behind you after you go and start flying out towards the combat. In fact, actually I've already got an enemy right behind me and he's probably a fresh spawn even. So yeah, I don't understand why the matchmaking is the way it is. I don't understand why the spawns are the way they are. And then the boundary just seems like a silly thing that could be easily fixed without any real issues, and people probably wouldn't even really notice at the end of the day. Just put some billboards at the edge of the map. People can still fly through the billboards, but still put something there so that people can go, oh, okay, that's the edge of the map. So that they know. Because it helps to know where the edges of the map are. Even if you just don't... Even if you don't have it a physical thing, have something maybe on the radar that shows you where the boundaries are. So that again, people will know where the boundaries are. It will make it so much easier for people to do certain things. And by certain things I mean avoid self-destructing, which isn't something I can say I've seen people do, but again, it'll help avoid that potential issue where somebody chases after an enemy and blows up because, well, they flew out to the edge of the map. But you know what? I'm going to go and cut off my commentary here. I don't really have too much to say. Those are my main 3 issues. I would love to see Frontier development, well, fix them. But honestly, considering that CQC isn't really what the game is all about, they probably won't even really do much about it. Which I guess is fine, but it's just one of those, you have the mode there, so you might as well make sure it essentially works. At least in a way in which people would be willing to actually play it, because I know that I, for example, probably won't be playing CQC either much or really at all beyond this point, because it just doesn't really seem balanced and really functional, in my opinion at least. Because it works, yeah, you can get into a match, you can fight some enemies in team deathmatch or deathmatch, or you can play capture the flag, wonderful. However, to me it just doesn't really seem like it works 100%. Like, it's at least functional, but I wouldn't really say it's like enjoyable personally. In fact, actually here my shields basically went down from full health to pretty much nothing in just a couple of hits, I believe. So that should tell you a little something about balance. The guy who's shooting at me probably has frag cannons or some such thing. I don't know exactly. But nonetheless. So, yeah, it works, it's functional, but I wouldn't really say it's enjoyable. Obviously, the people that are using vastly superior equipment than what their enemies have probably enjoy it, sure, but I certainly didn't enjoy it because I was running around with essentially starter equipment against people that had been playing for ages and had plenty in the way of better equipment than me. So, I would love, again, to see Frontier Development work on this and actually sort of balance it, maybe touch up the spawns, add an actual physical boundary so that people know exactly where the edges of the map are. But beyond that, it's fine. I just think they really need to just touch on something because they have it there. So you might as well make sure it actually is 100% functional in the sense that it works and it's enjoyable and people will actually want to play it. But that's going to be it for this episode. There is something like another, guess maybe 7 minutes or so of footage here. But as always, like, favorite, comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. But until then, goodbye and farewell.
Under attack. Shields offline. Taking damage. Warning, temperature critical. Hull integrity critical. Under attack. Warning, temperature critical. Target destroyed. Under attack. Shields online. Taking damage. Hull integrity critical. Out of bounds warning. Under attack. Target destroyed. Self-destruct in 10 seconds. Self-destruct in 5, 4, 3. Self-destruct sequence disengaged. Under attack.